This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. I'm a psychiatrist in private practice and a faculty member at the University of Virginia. Each week, my guests and I talk about meaningful coincidences, synchronicity, and serendipity. We discuss synchronicity from its many perspectives, spiritually, practically, and statistically. Why? To increase your connection to coincidences so that you can benefit from coincidence awareness in your daily life. I have written a book also called Connecting with Coincidence. Put that phrase, Connecting with Coincidence, in your web browser to find my book, my Psychology Today blog, my website, and social media sites. If you want to know how sensitive you are to coincidences, please go to my website to take the Weird Coincidence Survey, Connecting with Coincidence. Our guest today is Tara MacIsaac, a reporter and editor for the Beyond Science section of the Epoch Times. She explores research and accounts related to phenomena that challenge our current perspectives. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Tara and I have known each other for several years, and I've been always curious about asking her about how she happened to want to interview me. She came to Charlottesville when she was living in New York City and working for Epoch Times to interview me and several other people for the Division of Perceptual Studies, where we study reincarnation, near-death experiences, and other parapsychological phenomena. And Tara, in her writing about beyond science, things that challenge our current perspectives, became interested in synchronicity and coincidences and contacted me. How did that happen, Tara, and how did you decide to come visit?
Well, I don't remember precisely how I came across an article from somebody interviewing somebody at Northwestern University, I believe, and it was about the science behind coincidences, and it mostly talked about probability. And I wanted to look into it further. So, in my writing, I like to focus on academic sources and studies. And so, there are certain ways to Google search, for academic papers on certain subjects. And I looked for those on coincidence. And some of your work came up. So I started to read through it, and I thought it was very interesting. And I was happy to interview you about it. And then, from there on, I really appreciated you always came to me and asked me what I thought about some of the coincidences and the work you were doing. And, from there on, that's just how it progressed.
Oh, good. That's very logical. And since then, we've written a few things together for Psychology Today blogs and followed each other's work and try to help each other, trying to figure out what we're doing with all this weird science sort of things. And you've had some coincidences in your life that have been meaningful to you. And let's talk about one of them, and Falun Dafa. And before you tell us the coincidences about the book in Australia, would you tell our audience a little bit about Falun Dafa?
Yeah, Falun Dafa is a meditation practice that I do. I've been doing it for several years, and it started in China although it's persecuted in China, and it has been for a long time, especially strongly starting in 1999. And so a lot of practitioners there were put in forced labor camps and just horrible, horrible stuff around that. But the practice itself is really beautiful. It's based on truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. It involves slow, meditative, physical exercises like Tai Chi, sort of. And it also involves reading a book called Xuan Falun, which teaches those three main principles: truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance.
Beautiful. So you were interested and were in Australia. Tell us what happened.
So I had done the practice a little bit. I heard about it from a friend, and when I was in university, there was a club, so I did the meditation a bit. But when I was in Australia, I was living there for a little bit, and I was just really starting to look for one spiritual path. I was doing a lot of spending time alone in the woods and sort of, spiritual seeking kind of thing there. And I thought of Falun Dafa again, and I really wanted to read the book because I never had before, and I just felt like that could be the path for me. And I settled in a small town called Denmark in Western Australia just because I was looking for a place with a decent surf spot, and it had kind of a cute feel. It's a town of about 2,000 people. And I ended up getting a job at a pizza shop there. This man, Tim, and his wife, Tracy, they kind of took me in. They gave me a place to stay and everything too, and a job at their shop. And my first day of work there, I walked in, and my coworker there brought in Falun Dafa flyers, and I just thought it was really great because I was looking for Falun Dafa, and it turns out her mother was the only practitioner of Falun Dafa in town. And I mean, this is sort of small town Western Australia. There isn't a whole lot around either, not a lot of big cities. I mean, there's Perth on the west coast, but that was quite far away, so there aren't really a lot of practitioners even in the whole region. So the coincidence really struck me. She was able to give me the book the next day, that when I was really looking for it, there it was. I mean, the one practitioner within a certain area happened to have a strong connection to the place that I was working. She used to work there herself.
How have you thought about explaining that one?
I guess as somebody who is spiritual and who believes that there is more than just, sort of the materialist perspective, I believe because I wanted to find it, that I was helped to find it, you could say.
What about the idea of human GPS, that the part of the help involved you helping yourself?
Yeah. There's the idea that, if you're looking for something, you'll find it. And, you and I have discussed a little bit, even though I do have the spiritual perspective, certainly in my writing, I really try to just look at the science that's there and try and look at how science explains these things. And, you and I have talked a little bit about this human GPS capability, where it kind of seems like people are able to find things using some sixth sense. So that doesn't necessarily have to be something woo-woo. It could really be, different receptors in our brain that we haven't discovered yet, different kinds of information that we're able to pick up on that we just haven't come to understand yet.
Well, since we've talked, I tend to now see it's a collaborative effort between spiritual guides and our own internal capacity. Yeah, definitely. I guess on some level, there's this idea that there could be different energies that we pick up on too, and because I was seeking it, I was able to tap into that and find the book that I was looking for. But also there is some guidance too. I think we make a kind of Cartesian dichotomy between our own, let's say, untapped human potentials, at least for most of us, like the ability to find our way to places that we don't know that we need to be without knowing how we got there, an intuitive guide that gets us there. And I think that intuition, that what we mean by intuition is fairly complicated, but I've come to think of it more as the spiritual around us combining with the potentials within us to partner to create the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah, certainly. I think, from the spiritual perspective, if there are forces or beings guiding us, I think that we have to be receptive to that and to listen to it too. That's part of it.
And listen to it, and I think I don't know. I'm just getting lately to thinking that we can listen to the spiritual guides, we can listen to our own internal guides, and after a while, those two ideas begin to merge with each other. It's a way of increasing one's spiritual development by recognizing that we're in partnership inside and outside. We're in partnership with spiritual guides around us.
Yeah, bringing up the idea of spiritual development through coincidences. I think that as a spiritual person, I treat a lot of coincidences in my life as opportunities. I guess a lot of people see them sort of as signposts or something like that, and I kind of think that things happen for a reason. So when a coincidence happens, it can kind of help me look within and see, if this is something that I have to consider. It can be an opportunity to develop further. And there are a lot of benefits in terms of developing yourself spiritually as a person through coincidences. It can help people reaffirm their own beliefs, but also expand their ideas to other beliefs. I've studied. You and I have both, read about coincidences where people maybe even didn't believe in anything before, maybe were atheists, but they encountered something that really shook them, and it spurred them to consider spirituality or to grow a little bit more as a person. That's how they feel anyways. There are different perspectives on it.
Yeah, it's both those. Increase their spirituality, increase their sense that there are other entities, minds, guides around us that are discarnate, that aren't other people, and that we can use that experience to expand our own potentials, our own interpersonal potentials. And this coincidence of yours in Australia was fairly life transforming. You were ready for it. You got the book, and soon afterwards, you have become a fairly strong practitioner of Falun Dafa.
Yeah. And at the time, a lot of the Buddhist readings and other paths that I had explored, it all came together at this time where they were saying that you needed one path and one master and to guide your cultivation and that kind of thing. And I was actually saying in my mind at the time, I want to find a path so that I can attain enlightenment for the good of all beings. It's kind of a Buddhist idea. And so I really think that I had that strong thought that I kept reinforcing again and again and again. And I found what to me is, the path I was looking for.
This idea of one path and one master, that I have shied away from doing that, trying to go across spiritual traditions and picking from each one what I think might be useful. Coincidences span like that. But we'll continue this discussion in our next segment. Our guest today is reporter Tara MacIsaac and good friend, and we'll be back after a very short break.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to Connecting with Coincidences, CC with BB. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and our guest today is reporter Tara MacIsaac from Epoch Times, talking about some of her coincidences and her studies of coincidences. Tara, you've written an article recently on condolence coincidences. They have struck me as a very firm, defined category of coincidences reported through many different cultures over much time, and they refer to how when someone dies, in some way, a representation, a symbol of that person appears in the grieving person's surroundings and acts as condolences, acts as support, acts as reassurance that things aren't as bad as they feel. They help the grief-stricken person. Could you tell us about that article and some of the stories you ran across?
Sure. The example that stood out to me most was this. This woman, Jennifer Hill, she wrote her PhD thesis on condolence coincidences, and she had a personal one that sort of started her on that path of research. And basically, when she was a little girl, she was with her grandmother, and they were returning from her grandfather's funeral. And as they were entering her grandmother's house, they saw a gardenia flower blooming beside the door, and it was November. It was definitely not the time for this flower to be blooming. And gardenias are her grandmother's favorite flower. And her grandmother hadn't really allowed her grief to come out in tears anyways up to that point. But when she saw it, she felt like it was a sign from her husband who had passed away. It was a symbol of their marriage, their 40-year marriage. And she was able to let her grief out and to heal through that. And Jennifer Hill, who wrote about this in her thesis, she reviewed a lot of the literature. There have been some studies done on, people who have been grieving and experienced these kinds of coincidences and the impact it's had on them. And one thing I liked about Jennifer Hill's paper, she looked at the meaningfulness to the people who experience these coincidences. It's not, it's not all about proving that somebody from the afterlife sent a message, although that's the question that kind of, is in the background tantalizing us. What's behind this? Is it really somebody sending you a message? But the fact is that it really can help people heal. When they see those things, they feel connected to the person who's passed. They feel often a sense of peace and love. And it has spurred the spiritual development we've talked a little bit about, where For some people, it confirms to them that there is an afterlife, or that there is some benevolent, intelligence trying to give them some comfort, because these coincidences just don't seem to follow the normal rationale of life, like a flower blooming in November when it shouldn't be at precisely the time that somebody needs to see it to help them.
Yeah, very good. Very good. You've also noticed that birds play a role in condolence coincidences. Tell us what you've seen there.
Yeah. Well, I had looked through a list that you had compiled, over the years. You could collect some coincidence stories. And then I also read this PhD thesis, and I saw some examples in other places as I was doing my research. And it just struck me that almost all of them were about birds. Obviously, that flower one is not, they're not all about birds, but a lot of them had to do with for example, this one woman, after her husband died, she was closing up her house for the last time, the family home, and a bird flew in and flew up to the bedroom. And for her, it was a sign that her husband was, saying goodbye at that moment, telling her to, go on with her life. And yeah, the birds. For example, there was the Orlando nightclub shooting.
Yeah.
And then there were 49 birds exactly appearing overhead when they were giving a service for the 49 victims. And that coincidence really struck people. And again, it's about the meaning that it has for people. A lot of people reported after seeing that they felt healed, that it gave them comfort as they were mourning the victims. And so anyways, I just was struck about the birds. So it kind of made me think, is that a coincidence that it's all these bird coincidences? Is there something behind it? Do birds have some special place in this phenomenon?
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock had a movie called The Birds, where the birds were malevolent, attacking people in a horde or in a group. But here it's sometimes movies tend to take the positive and switch them into negative, just almost emphasizes that there is still some coordination around. And in this case, with the 49 birds and the 49 deaths at the Orlando nightclub, it makes you wonder how that happens. As you say, it ends up being what it means. Even statisticians, some of them, like David Hand, will say, well, it's still probability. You can explain it statistically. That is a very low probability event, 49 and 49, right when the service is going on to memorialize the dead. That's a very low probability. But he even says, well, you got to do meaning sometimes. But how do you talk about a little bit how probability and explanation work on that story?
Well, the way I would see it is, in terms of probability, you could say that there are a lot of funeral services where there are birds overhead and nobody counts them. And, it's just the fact that somebody looked for a coincidence to a certain degree. And so there's the law of very large numbers, which is usually what statisticians use to dismiss, I guess, the more mystical explanation of coincidences, to say that it's just that things happen all the time and there are just gazillions of events every day. So it's natural that one in a gazillion events is going to be very surprising and strange. And because of perhaps, the media, and we're more connected today, these stories are more likely to be shared. So we see them. Even something that makes us want to say, whoa, what are the chances? That's so low probability. If you look at the grander scheme of things, a statistician might argue that it is actually probable that will happen. But
the fun thing for me in any of these is not that it happens only 49 and 49, but that somebody looked up and took the picture. That's a key variable in there. It's almost like quantum observation. It didn't happen. It's a waveform until you look at it, and then it makes it a particle. It makes it a wave into the wave becomes collapsed into something more solid. And that's what this reminds me of. It could have happened, and maybe happens a lot, but you needed to have someone willing to look, and how that person decides to look right at that moment becomes part of the equation and lowers the probability, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you're right with that. I mean, if I had taken a photo there, I probably wouldn't have counted the birds. But this photographer decided to, and that became something. And I guess, in terms of birds, to noticing that birds have to do with a lot of the condolence coincidences, you could say that it's because birds are everywhere. No matter what country you're in, there are birds around. They're in a lot of different settings, outdoor funerals, that kind of thing. So maybe there's a higher probability that if there are all these condolence coincidences, that some of them would have to do with birds. But there are other, yeah.
That's because birds are around all the time. I read a funny one about a rabbi who had been feeding ducks at a pond on a regular basis, and the ducks were in a fence behind the pond, and at the funeral march went near the pond, and the ducks got out in a row and followed the funeral to wherever it was going. That's a little more intentional. He'd had a relationship with them, and the birds followed, partly because they had a relationship. And that suggests to me that somehow there's a consciousness in some of these things that can do something we can't do, which is fly around, that somehow pulls some of them to where there is grief, and in a way that they are there to help with condolences, to comfort the grieving. And it's a way of concretizing the spiritual into flying beings that then come to us. They're almost representatives of higher spiritual beings that we can't see.
Yeah, there's also the idea, with homing pigeons and migratory birds, the mechanism isn't fully understood, how it's partly understood how they navigate. It's not entirely understood how they, map locations really in their minds. And part of that has to do, as far as scientists know so far, it's still a bit mysterious, that with, for example, in homing pigeons, some iron particles in their beaks that help them align with the magnetic field of the Earth. And, if there is some sort of energy on a physical level that we don't fully understand yet, that we're connected to, that we're receiving, it could be that these birds are more sensitive to it and they tap into it. With the duck story, there was a similar story about elephants that I read before, where these elephants that had a strong connection with a man who died came to mourn him, and it seemed as though from far away they knew that he had died, and they came and just stayed by his house, and it was very uncharacteristic, very unusual. So it could be that animals are able to pick up on these things too, and they just maybe are a bit more open to following their intuitions because they don't have the complex thoughts that we do about, oh, that's not rational, I'm not going to go to somebody's house just because I feel I should go there, or something like that. And the duck story actually was, I think, low probability because of the details too. Those ducks, I know the story you're talking about, those ducks had never left this enclosure before. They were always happy to stay within this area. And the widow, she didn't know how they got out of the fence because it was a fenced-in area. So it wasn't just that the ducks were there at that specific time. They had, in 30 years, they had never left their enclosure. So sometimes when you dig down into the details too, and all of the different elements that come together, the view of the probability changes. It almost seems to become lower and lower probability.
Yes. And this digging down is such a valuable thing to do, both to see if you can find common scientific explanations, as well as to unveil yet more low probability ideas that make it seem even more astounding. And when I look at these low probability events, I tend to say that there's a hidden mechanism. And the low probability, not always, makes me want to look for what that mechanism is. And as we're talking, I begin to see vibrational energies coming out of the grieving people that animals can pick up. I mean, a cat named Oscar could tell when people were dying and go to their bedsides, and a lot of other stories like that. We're coming to the end of this segment. Our guest is Tara MacIsaac. We're talking about a range of coincidence possibilities, and we'll be back after a short break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. Our guest is a reporter and friend of mine, Tara MacIsaac. We even have talked about doing a book together, and who knows if that will happen. So I will now present Tara with a coincidence of mine that made me think I was living in the Matrix. I like to go to Five Rhythms dance, and I go maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Five Rhythms was invented by Gabriel Roth, a New York dancer who showed us ways in which we could dance rather than simply sit. It's a kind of a meditation in motion that gets you into your body, and the key things are your feet and the rhythm. And the idea behind it is to be able to become the music, and you lose your sense of self. That same idea of a lot of meditative and spiritual paths is the ego disappears and you become part of what's going on. And the music tends to be something I tune into more and more, so I know what's coming. And I love when other people are doing that, and I can dance with other people who are doing it. It kind of seems to get me tuned in to the rhythms and the music happening in regular everyday life, where I think there are lots of rhythms that we can tune into through our intuition, through our bodies, through our emotion, through who knows what to call it. And those rhythms help us decide where to go and what to do. So this last Tuesday, I got out of my car to go get a parking sticker from the meter. You have to put a credit card in to get your time. And as I was about to put my card in, a woman said, "Hey, look, there is a sticker here that will allow you to stay until 8 o'clock." And it was about 6:30, and I was planning to stay till about 8:30. but it said about 8:06 is when the thing ran out. So what would somebody have done of purchased one of these parking stickers for an hour and a half and then just left it there? That's kind of strange, but I didn't think about it. I said, no, I'm going to go for 2 hours. I don't need that. So I spent my $6 on the parking meter and put my sticker on my dashboard and went in. And didn't think about it any. But then it got to be about close to time for dance to end. And usually they have a meeting afterwards, hold hands and talk about stuff. It's really beautiful. But I felt the urge to leave. I just felt an urge to leave. I needed to go shopping for doing some Thanksgiving cooking. But I just felt a strong urge to leave. And I got to my car and looked at my watch, my clock on my car, and it was 8:04. It was 2 minutes before that sticker, that free sticker would have worked for me. I wondered about that. Here I got a hint that told me that I was going to stay there for this particular amount of time, or at least I could be staying for that amount of time, and I probably would, but I didn't think so. I rationally overrode it, but intuitively I came out right about the time that the parking sticker time ran out. So I started thinking about that a little bit more, and that maybe when I was at dance, my intuition told me to go to my car so that I could prove to myself that the sticker was the free sticker was the one that I should have taken. So in a way to confirm a kind of low probability event. But so you have to look at what the details are that and your own intentions, because I like seeing coincidences that maybe I created it, but then I thought again, it was really the right time for me to leave. I needed to go shopping. That somehow that free parking sticker was telling me it knew, and I may as well take the hint. So here was something coming out of what I would call the matrix, out of someplace, a hint, almost like an Easter egg hunt, looking for something in the forest and looking for clues. Here was a clue about something, and I didn't take it. How many clues don't we take? Lots of them. What do you think of this one, Tara?
Yeah, I like the way that you thought of it. As you're explaining it, I was kind of thinking too, when you saw that the time on that free sticker, it could have seeped into your, subconscious or your unconscious mind. And then it just kind of made you think, okay, I'm going to leave now for whatever reason. It could be to almost create a coincidence that would, tailor to this enjoyment that you get from seeing coincidences, or I don't know. It if you do take it as a sign that was the amount of time you should have stayed there. I think that we have these things a lot in life where it seems like things are going away you don't want. You have some circumstance where you have to leave work early and you're kind of annoyed about it or something, and then it actually ends up being for the better because you needed to actually get something done, and everything works out in the long run anyways. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say with a situation like that. It could be that it did seep into your subconscious, and you kind of on some level just decided at that time, oh, I should go. But it could have been a sign to, maybe in the future when you see something like that, you'll think, is that a good time to leave? Maybe that is a good time. Hey, you're right, that is a good time. I'll take that sticker,
Yeah, and it's not just the sticker. I keep it in my car now just to remind me of it. It's just that when a low probability event appears, this was a low probability event. Somebody bought it and then left, and this other person didn't need it, and so she offered it to me. The timing was exquisite for this. The other person had seen it, didn't want it, and was offering it to me right when I was going to to purchase my own. It's a very low probability set of sequences. Again, statisticians aside, and what it taught me and teaches me as we're talking about it is that I will again experience low probability events, and they will walk by me. They will be there with me, and I need to be able to know when to grab them and when not to. I think sometimes uh, grabbing these low probability events may cause trouble too. So how do you know when to do it? And you have to make the decision in the instant. The person I had on the program last week talks about organizational leadership and synchronicity and human GPS and groups acting as one, because he had an experience in which he was part of a group as an 18-year-old helping people out of the rubble of a tornado in 1953 in Waco, Texas. And without talking, this group worked as a team, almost like birds or fish moving together. And he got struck by that idea that human beings could do that as well, and tries to teach organizations and companies to be able to do the same thing. And one of the things he advises CEOs and others to do is to be able to take the opportunity that presents itself in the moment, right then. He was in an airport in Chicago's O'Hare Airport, and saw a woman, and she was out walking past him, and he ran and got to her, and started talking with her, and somehow he knew she was right for him, and they were married for 20 years afterwards, and helped each other a great deal in their lives. He learned to be able to seize the moment. And this was a much smaller version of it, this parking sticker, but it's the same idea. When do you know to pick? When can you seize that opportunity, that low probability that happens in that moment? And then if those things happen like that, how do they happen? How do I explain that parking sticker showing up right then? As small as it is, it seems to me to be a very good lesson for me, for you, for our listeners, to be able to be tuned in to mind and environment and be able to act quickly on what's in front of us.
Yeah, certainly. I think that the useful coincidences and when to follow a coincidence or not, to make a decision based on a coincidence, it's dynamic. It's like everything in life. It depends on the particular situation. With the man you were saying who met his future wife sort of through a chance meeting, I think that taking the opportunity when something seems to be showing you that this is something that could be good, taking that initial opportunity is good. If it's something that, relates to a bigger decision in life, just giving it more consideration when you have time is good too. Like with the parking sticker, taking the sticker and realizing, wow, that's a low probability occurrence. That's a coincidence. Let me mull that over for a few minutes. Should I leave at that time? You know what? That is a good idea. I will. But if it really isn't something you want to do, if you really didn't, when that parking sticker was out and you really wanted to stay and talk, you wouldn't leave just because the parking sticker told you to, right? And similarly, that man, if he dated this woman for a little while and realized that he didn't want to marry her, he shouldn't, just because the way they met was, amazing and magical and coincidental in a way.
Very good. Very good. You have an example of that when you were walking down the street in Brooklyn.
Yeah. I used to live in Brooklyn, and I was just walking down the street back to my apartment, and I was talking to my dad on the phone, and my dad had a car accident when I was a baby, and he's brain injured and partially paralyzed, and I was just kind of worried about him. He has a caregiver, but I just felt like he needed more care, and it was this thing throughout my adult life. Once I became old enough to realize that I can take some responsibility for my dad, I always felt that I wanted to be his caregiver and help him more. But I was, in my 20s, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to make that commitment, because I would have to move back to Canada, and it's a big commitment to make for the rest of his life. And so anyways, I got off the phone with him and I closed my eyes as I was walking, just briefly. I wasn't going to run into anything, but I asked the question in my mind, what should I do about my dad? And I opened my eyes, and right in front of me, literally in red neon letters, were the words on the side of a building, assisted living. And when you see assisted living facilities, usually they don't have red neon signs with those words. It was right in front of my eyes. It just seemed like a direct answer. So that made me think, well, is that the answer? Maybe I can't commit. I was very nomadic in my 20s, especially. I was here, there. Maybe I couldn't commit to staying in one place and being a caregiver. And I considered that possibility, but in the end, I realized that it wasn't the right choice for us. And I have decided to be my father's caregiver, and I am now more stable, and he's going to be moving in with me soon. But that was an example of it was, to me, very low probability. I mean, you don't see that kind of sign just anywhere. And the fact that as soon as I opened my eyes after asking that question, it was right in my face. It made me consider that possibility, but I also just really looked rationally at the pros and cons and what was right for the situation, and didn't just, follow what the coincidence told me.
We're at the end of this segment with Tara MacIsaac. We'll be back after a short break.
The Earth is under ever-increasing pressure from untenable lifestyles and growing populations. Yet, viable answers seem in short supply. What if I told you there's an ancient form that can empower you to take charge of your life? What if your entire family could be enfolded and supported by life itself, finding safe passage through challenging times? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with great news: an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes based in an ancient form of shamanism, easily learned and used by your entire family. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow are a series of online adult and children's lessons instructing your entire family on natural law, how to cooperate with and be supported by the powers of the universe. Visit findyourpathhome.com to find these unique and powerful classes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. I'm your host, and I'm with my good friend and colleague and reporter for Epoch Times, Tara MacIsaac. Tara, there's a bunch of things that we've gone through in our discussions, talking about how to categorize coincidences, how to explain them, and how to use them as part of an effort to develop a discipline called coincidence studies. And I keep working on this idea and have gotten more now into looking at coincidence awareness as a path towards spiritual development, which can be part of any spiritual guideline or way. And that's where staying with one master and one method is something that I've tended not to do. When I've written about psychotherapy, I tended not to look at become a member of a particular school, but to see what's common among all of them. And I'm trying to see how synchronicity awareness, coincidence awareness can fit in with other schools of spiritual development. It's part of what I'm working on right now. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at a lot of different schools and ways of thinking before I decided on one path. I mean, that's just my approach. Everybody's welcome to their own, of course. And yeah, I think that there are benefits to understanding how different traditions view these kinds of things. I mean, in all of my work, I really like to look at knowledge and wisdom, I would say, that's been passed down through antiquity, through all of human history. I mean, I think that generally speaking, the modern viewpoint often dismisses as sort of backwards or, intangible, the ideas of the past. But I think that there's a lot to be said about that, and that's how people existed and understood their surroundings and survived for thousands of years. And I think a lot of what you're doing with coincidence studies, it's helping modern people put it into a scientific context. I really liked that about your approach, that it always seemed very grounded and serious-minded in a way that can appeal sort of to the modern mindset. But it also respects different traditions from the past and what they have to teach us. And I think it's important to take the ancient knowledge and ways of viewing the world and to just see what merit it has, and think about it with what we currently know. It's not about going back to the past, but it's taking the perspectives we have now, what we've learned as human beings, and sort of reincorporating parts of it and just looking at it more holistically to understand, life, coincidences, what it means to be a conscious living being.
Very good, very good. And let me give you a specific example of what I mean about connecting up coincidence awareness and spirituality. One of the ancient wisdom outcomes is getting to the here and now. Ram Dass did a book, Be Here Now, but all kinds of meditative practices, mystical experiences get us into the eternal now that goes on for infinity and for eternity. It's really hard to be in that moment, but once you get into that moment of now, it expands forever. And it's a wonderful place to be able to visit, if not be in for some prolonged period of time. And I'm suggesting that coincidence awareness, synchronicity awareness, can lead people into the fullness of the here and now also. And it happens by noticing that something in your mind is similar to what's happening around you. And the more you notice that what's in your mind and what's around you have some correlation with each other, the more you can see that many of the other events happening around you are also related. That Jung called synchronicity, the definition of synchronicity was based on a Chinese idea of things falling together in time. It was a causal way of thinking in China, ancient China, that said that things didn't cause each other as much as they happened together. And once you start being able to see coincidences between your mind and your environment, you begin to see more possibilities that what's happening around you are all related to each other, and that brings you into the here and now.
Yeah, I think, not to get too technical, but quantum physics, I know that that's appealed a lot to describe things that we don't understand yet, just because it's so revolutionary in how we understand reality. But, fundamentally, it's really showing us that on a certain level there can exist things that don't really adhere to our understanding of, things being separate, whether it's people being separate or particles being separate or events being separate in time. Basically, it makes us rethink on a certain level the relationships that we currently understand in space and time. I think it could relate.
Yeah, I'm trying to see how events falling together in time um, might relate to the quantum physics ideas about time and space being much more flexible than we think it is.
Yeah, I guess I mean the idea is in my understanding anyways at a very microscopic level where there are it's there are these waves. For example, there's this idea of human consciousness or the mind, that it's actually sort of, to simplify it, these waves. So it's not that there are separate neuron particles and they're communicating with each other through these pulses, but rather that there's this wave that simultaneously connects different parts of your thoughts and your brain into a cohesive consciousness. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's at a certain level there's it's a simultaneous connection.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. A simultaneous connection. Simultaneous connection of these waveforms that create your thought patterns. And I'm trying to say, even thinking back about elephants and ducks, that these waveforms are not only around my mind, these coherent waveforms, but they're also emanating from or part of or related to waveforms that are around us that other beings can pick up.
Yes, exactly. One of the theorists that I've been looking at, he's from the Netherlands. I think his name is pronounced Dirk Meyer. But he talks about our brain having receptors that we obviously don't quite understand yet, although we're getting there, that can pick up on wave information. That's not only your personal thoughts are represented as waves, but you pick up on wave information from different frequencies in the universe, in the world, and he thinks of a sort of a world consciousness in that sense. Like you do have your own contained field sort of these waves, but they interact with waves from outside of you, and that's how we pick up on information that we don't we can't really explain how we know it, that kind of thing.
You're talking about telepathy, for example.
Yeah, it can explain a lot of those kinds of things. Obviously, this is theoretical quantum physics, but it's interesting to look at these ideas and to explore them further as we continue to grasp these things more.
Well, that's very consistent with my psychosphere ideas. I don't know that you've told me about this guy. You told me about the Russian researcher, but I don't know if you sent me something about him. So you can please do that, because the receptors and waveforms are fundamental to the way I see all this. See our ability to pick up telepathic information, pick up clairvoyant, human GPS. These are based on wave receptor concepts. And I look at the psychosphere as having something to do with our mental atmosphere, or being our mental atmosphere. And in this mental atmosphere, we exchange information in some ways, and that there are not only waveforms that we exchange information through, but there are condensations of waveforms in the psychosphere, in our mental atmosphere, located below the ionosphere and the Earth's crust. And in these condensations are some entities that are helping to guide us in our lives.
Yeah, I think that a couple of different, quantum ideas that I've researched, one being from Dirk Meyer, and then a more famous one that's been around for a long time by Sir Roger Penrose, who's a famed physicist. Penrose talks more about the receptors, and then Dirkmeyer talks more about the waveforms. They both talk about both aspects, but what you're saying really corresponds to what's being said by some physicists that I've studied and others.
Good. I'll have to get that Dirkmeyer reference from you if you haven't said it to me. The idea that we're in an ethereal pool, that we're in kind of an ocean that has lots of waves in it. People know that we are more and more that we're all interconnected, but the question is not whether we're all interconnected. We are. The question is, how are we interconnected? How does it happen that we connect with each other at a distance or even in person? And these are part of the science of the future that I know you've been looking at for a long time in various ways. And we're coming to the end, Tara. It's been a beautiful discussion with you. Thank you very much for being on my show.
Thank you again for having me.